Welcome to the first Iowa City Public Library panel presentation of the Fall 2019 International Writing Programs Residency, our 53rd fall residency, and I'm very grateful first to the staff here at the Iowa City Public Library, which makes this space available to us most Fridays during the fall residency, and then to Downing Thomas, Dean of International Programs, who makes the pizza in the back available to all of us so that we can be fortified for the discussion to follow. The subject today is writing and in connection with this, I was thinking about the many wonderful images we have of writers trying to make do over the years, from William Carlos Williams swiveling in his chair to pick up his typewriter between patients in his waiting room in Rutherford, New Jersey, to bank tellers like William Faulkner, who managed not to deliver any mail for the 8 months he was the postmaster in Oxford, Mississippi, but he did manage to write "As I Lay Dying" during that time. So the question of how our day jobs influence our writing and how our writing may influence our day jobs is of particular importance to all of us here. You'll notice that there are pencils that have been passed around with little pieces of paper. I ask you to write questions which we will give to the writers after they make their short presentations with which to start the afternoon's proceedings. Right here to my left, we have Madara Gruntmane, whose poetry has been called fresh, expressive, and provocatively open. She is the recipient of the 2016 Latvian Literature Reader's Choice Award for her first book of poems, Narcosis, and the 2019 Annual Public Broadcasting Cultural Award for Best Literary Work. Next to her is Thwada, who is a journalist turned advocate, whose work focuses on gender equality and women's changing roles in Myanmar, sometimes known as Burma. She has published 3 novels, 1 collection of short stories, and recently has been examining the representation of women in media since the removal of press censorship in her home country of Myanmar. Next to her is Batsirai Chigama, a literary activist who is passionate about writing and publishing narratives outside of the mainstream, and her work is widely anthologized. She teaches performance and creative writing workshops in schools around the globe, and her work often deals with the economic and social struggles particular to women in Zimbabwe. Finally, we have Buddhisagar from Nepal, who has written 3 novels and 1 collection of poems, including the 2010 best-selling Karnali Blues, and an English translation is in the works. That same year, 2010, he won the National Talent Award by the Nepali government. Buddhisagar regularly works with a program called Book Bus, which brings literary access to rural communities around Nepal. All 4 of today's panelists are participating in the fall residency, courtesy of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. And I want to single out for special thanks Lee Marshall, who manages to put all of this together for us week by week. And you can follow along with the comments that the writers are going to make. So the floor I give now to Madara.
Hello, everybody. So, I will put the thesis at first, and this is this. An author's creative side is inseparable from his or her life and work. I am 30 years old, and I am a poet. I have to admit that this isn't always easy to say out loud when someone asks me what to do for a living. I'd rather say that I work somewhere. I'm producer of culture events. I say just so that I can look normal. Many perceive that being a poet isn't an actual job, if you consider a job to be something you do in order to earn money, so that you can provide for your family and yourself. By that definition, then being a poet in Latvia isn't something you can rely on. If you only work as a poet or a writer, you cannot really predict your income, nor their regular paychecks. These types of jobs don't really allow you to plan monthly budget, utilities, apartment, and don't even think about credit debt. In Latvia, the average poet publishes a book every 2 years, and even that is not a guarantee. It is possible to apply for stipends through the State Culture Capital Foundation, and if a committee accepts you, approves your application, then you may be awarded somewhere between 1,000 or 2,000 euros. Theoretically, one can get by with the amount for an entire creative period, a year or two, while a book is being written, but of course, this is not realistic. This is why the majority of authors, parallel to their writing, have a steady job as a teacher and or translator, or work in a advertising agency or somewhere else. I cannot speak to how they deal with combining their work with their writing. I can only attest to my own experience. I also have a job. I own an event planning agency. A team and I organize public culture events, mainly in the capital, Riga, Latvia. Our task is to create high-quality events for significant state and city celebrations such as Independence Day, city festivals, contemporary art forums, etc. My thought process in my work life, which can also be seen in my writing, is part of every moment of my daily life. Every culture event that we create is a microcosm, just like a poem. And my greatest goal is that the person who partakes in these moments gains something for themselves and becomes richer from it. Similarly, every person I meet and every moment at work serves as an inspiration and an experience that I can use in my writing. Yes. It is impossible to open my office's door and immediately forget that I am an author because I am the boss. Thoughts of a literary life don't fade. They are with me throughout my workday without being hindrance. To be honest, while I'm literary retreats, thoughts of work don't go away, and that unfortunately interferes with writing. Taking into account the delicate process of creating something, it is cumbersome if someone continually bothers you about work, or if work situations arise which only you can solve. I have had instances where I am reading in front of a large audience and my phone rings for 5th time in a row because the client believes that I am the only one that can solve their issue. You begin to feel that you are being pulled in half and cannot be both a writer and a company manager. Luckily, it doesn't happen too often. And even to come here, I needed to ensure that when I return home, my life hasn't crumbled while I'm away in Iowa. To elaborate on the thesis that I stated in the beginning, an author's creative side is inseparable from his or her life at work. Writing is a way of life, and work is often a separate way of life. Yet everything that you do is accomplished with a much richer perspective because you are a worker with an advantage. The advantage, a literary worldview that helps you with your job. However, it would be ideal if one could separate work from writing, because while work events can serve as inspiration, they can become a hindrance to what an author is trying to create. And please, let me read you one poem what I wrote when I was in accommodation in the United Kingdom. Surrounded by roaring sea, screeching gulls, a stubbornly cold spring, British people, smiling dogs, trains, buses. I walk, 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 with a map, without a map, to places I should and shouldn't be. Sounds, smells, chaos, peace, everything at once. I start feeling sick on the top deck of the bus. Everything inside is shaking, everything outside is shaking, can't vomit it out. Where have you vanished to? Why don't you want to just be? Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Thwada. I will present this topic in three parts. Number one, writing and living. Number two, writing and being a woman. Finally, writing and other careers. Before I proceed, I'd like to provide a bit of background information. I came from Myanmar, which is a country in Southeast Asia. According to the 2014 census, the literacy rate of the country is 89.5% of the total population of 51 million. This statistic accounts for 92.6% of men and 86.9% of women. Firstly, can Burmese writers make a living as a writer? Before the 1988 military coup and dictatorship, authors were not worthy from their writing, but they could survive by writing alone because there were almost 100,000 publications produced a year. However, after 1990, the political instability, economic sanction, and systematic destruction of education by the military government sent people into poverty, and the publishing industry was censored. Today, according to data gathered by the Myanmar Publisher Association in 2015, the estimated number of titles published annually was almost 40,000, and the average number of copies being printed is 1,000. The average price of a book varies from about $2 to $8, and the writer earns 15% of the total selling price of a book. Therefore, a writer can only survive when a film production company buys their novel or if they receive honorarium from literature talk. Secondly, what it's like for female writers in Burma, a country where patriarchy values are deeply rooted. For a male writer to freely think or write, their wives have to support them. In my family, my father is also an author. He loves dreaming, reading, writing, and talking with those who love literature, but not interested in seeking money. My mother is the breadwinner. Thus, for a woman to survive as an author, it is more challenging because she not only has to work outside like her husband, she is also expected to do housework and childcare when she gets home. There are many female writers in our country. Only a few of them continue writing long-term because they aren't afford time and space to write. Finally, how do I balance writing and my other profession conducting gender-related research for an NGO? My NGO research provides me with income, but it also feeds my writing. I created my first novel based on my experience of working in the cyclone recovery project, specifically how severely the community was affected by the cyclone, and the challenges encountered during the recovery phase. My writing career also benefits my researcher's life because we are doing socioeconomic and political research. Our research findings go only to policymakers for advocacy purposes. However, sometimes we need public awareness to push those policymakers toward change. This February, with the support of UK government, our organization conducted research on people's lives on Sino-Burma border. The objective was to inform mainland residents about the social, cultural, and political lives of residents of the border who experience frequent conflict, particularly with Rohingya near the Bangladesh border. Our people argue each other about these issues with minimal knowledge about the lives of people living on the border. And in order to resolve these arguments, the general public needs to know how the state defines the border versus how border citizens define it by the reality of their lives. In addition to our research, we decided to educate the general public about border lives in an artistic way. As a part of the project, I wrote 3 short stories, which are based on the real-life stories of 3 people living on Sino-Burma border. I was not giving the message very directly to the readers because I also keep the value of art, even though those stories were written for an educational purpose. I just let them read and think and see the situation for themselves. We published that short story collection book entitled Borderless Cloud and distribute to the public for free. Thanks to the success of the project, we have continued to integrate the arts into research. As a researcher, I have received many resources to create stories, and I'm still catching up with the contemporary world as I'm traveled for my work. That is how my 2 careers relate and complement each other in terms of income and resources. Sometimes I have some occupational stress because of my work, and all my inspiration lost for writing. Last but not least, what I want to say is, for a writer in a developing country, we have to do other jobs for survival. For a female writer who has already got a job with a good income, it is not a challenging issue. But it does not happen for all female writers. Depending on the difference of class, age, race, and cultural background, some women might have more challenges that are limiting their creativity. I'd like to suggest that we should also need to promote the sense of women creativity and make a space for them. That's all.
Good afternoon. I am Batsirai Chigama from Zimbabwe, the only place that you will have your first former president buried twice in 1 week. It's a place full of sad stories, beautiful stories, and humorous stories. Where I come from is a place where an average person goes through a lot in a day. You wake up to no water and electricity in the house. Return home to no electricity and water in the house. The little time that is left to an individual is used to find means in which to prepare a meal, queue for water at the bore for hours. If you have a car, queue for fuel at the petrol station. And if you're lucky, have a bank account with a little bit of money in it, you queue to get your cash out of the bank as well. The average person is faced with the daunting primary task of survival. Many other things, including the things that one is passionate about, like writing, become secondary to all else. Writing end is a myth to many writers. It's all other things first, then writing when they can. The book industry is not spared in an economy that is not functioning properly. And in Zimbabwe, most writers have taken to self-publishing because most of the publishing houses have closed. Bookshops are a few, and they barely sell books because disposable income is very little. Individual writers have become mobile bookshops, selling their works on their own. The non-existent publishing economy has resulted in a writing industry that pays poorly. Given this context, the practicality of being a full-time writer is always under scrutiny. I have a friend who quit her job to write full-time. I think she's brave. She has tons of hours to research, to travel, to read, to write. I worry, though, that in a hostile economic climate, all her efforts may come to naught. Such dedicated writers often end up frustrated, published in foreign lands but unrecognized in their own country. I am an average Zimbabwean with an 8-to-5 job doing marketing for an ICT company, a job that is in no way related to my writing. I am grateful that my employer recognizes that I'm a writer and affords me time away to participate in this beautiful residence at Iowa, for instance, and that my job has been a reliable way of supporting my writing in many ways. Many writers the world over cannot afford to write full-time and find themselves stuck in jobs they hate, or if lucky, they can tolerate. Bills have to be paid, mouths fed, personal health issues have to be treated, and unforeseen circumstances we have no control over have to be anticipated. The writer has to be aware of whatever afflicts them, be it work, hostile political or economic environments, or personal matters such as relationships, and find a way around it, because the pressure is always there when they are asked, when is the next book or play or film or novel coming out? Even though materially and financially there may be nothing to show for doing what we do, this is the reason writers continue to create and share stories with the world, because the writing is unstoppable. As William Carlos Williams said, I think all writing is a disease. You can't stop it. Stories and ideas nag us out of sleep until we jump out of bed and just start writing. Inspiration has no decency. It visits us at the most improbable times. Anne Frank said, I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear, my courage is reborn. As writers, we do not write for others. We do not only write for others to read. We write to save ourselves from demons that haunt us, from stories that demand to be told. Writing keeps us grounded, keeps us sane. The urgency of a situation knocks at our creative doorway and haunts us until we submit. There's no one-size-fits-all formula when juggling a full-time job and writing. The good news is that ideas and stories pop up anywhere. And if one is attentive enough, good stories may come from the most unlikely places. When ideas come across the room to flirt with you, write them down, even if they are incomplete. Those small ideas are the beginning of everything.
Namaste. I'm Buddhisagar. I'm from Nepal. Full-time writer. It was a sunny day in 2013. I was going to the office. I was the editor of a literary supplement in one of the Nepali daily newspaper. In 1 week's time, I was to be engaged to my girlfriend. All of a sudden, I decided to quit my job. I was tired of writing for the newspaper. That innocent manufacturing style of writing was taking toll on the quality of content. I had started to feel that there were so many content that indeed brewing up, but was just wasted like a immature wine taken out of barrel before time. This led me think, and I still think now, that life is unpredictable. Therefore, one has to be fulfilled at heart, and heart's contentment cannot wait tomorrow. It has to be done now, right now, at this exact moment. I have met many prosperous people who were successful in their envies. Who are successful in their envies, but they are empty at their very core, like a chocolate donut. That black hole has sucked their cheerfulness during life's celebration. Even when they laugh with half their mouth shut, as if they are saving it for the scarce time. I have another copy, so. At 32 years old, I didn't want to see that hole of sadness and nothingness growing inside me, so I decided to become a full-time writer. Fortunately, I had a publisher that encouraged me from the very beginning, and my first novel had already been received well by reader. Financially, I was secure, and with the help of hefty royalties from my first novel, I was able to marry my beloved. Guess what? Royalties help us to celebrate our daughter's 5th birthday too. Then there was a new problem. I had a whole day for myself to write, which lead to procrastination by putting off writing for another hour, another day. I didn't even realize that good chunk of time has already been passed. My friends group, formed largely in the workplace, became a sparse as a month and years passed by. I had to create a new life around me after that. When I belonged to workplace, people inquired about my work. I instantly answered that I was a journalist. But after I had taken off writing as a full-time job, I used to stare blankly in the face of this question and trying not to sound jobless. I told them I was a writer. People used to dismiss my answer and question me further about my real work with capital W. My answer to them was, my work is to write. My answer made them feel sorry for me. As if I was the most pitiful human being in this world. Can you really live off writing? They would ask. Very sorry indeed. Bimal Niva, Nepali poet, has a very interesting answer to that. He says, of course, you can live off writing on the condition that you take a teeny dose of breath at a time. Time has changed in Nepal. Fortunately, my readership has also grown. Since the publication of my second novel, my readers have been blessing me with the hefty gift of royalty ever since. It's been 6 years I have been a full-time writer, and now I can proudly say that I write for a living. Sometimes I miss office hours. At that time, when everybody leaves for work, I pack my laptop set off for a cafe in the city. I write there. My 5-year-old daughter gets excited and goes around the house announcing that her daddy is going to the office. Sometimes she won't let me go alone. I do not have a financial backup in the bank or nor a retirement fund, but I also know that every book is like a seed that you sow in the soil. In future, it might yield you fruit or it might just wither away. Nobody knows. But if you get paralyzed with fear of withering, you will freeze, unable to keep sowing, unable to keep traveling on the path of creation. I respect all those writers who keep writing despite the drudgery that they have to carry in order to survive. Their mind and their hands might be engaged in their everyday work, but their heart is always there in their creation. Therefore, I believe that all the writers of this world at the end are full-time writers. Each one of us is distant travel of our passion, who sometimes get lost in the transit of daily life. Can you really live off writing? I used to smile at that question. Now, after some time, I have an answer. I don't know whether you can live off of writing or not, but one thing is certain. If I don't write, I won't survive. Thank you.
Thank you. What a wonderful collection of presentations. Now, I hope that you have written some questions down, and while we wait for Lee to gather some of them up, maybe I'll just say a few words that Buddhisagar, as you were talking about going off to the cafe, it made me think about the great American short story writer John Cheever, who used to put on a suit and tie in the morning in his apartment building on Sutton Place South and go down with his briefcase and all the other businessmen on their way to work, except that he would go down one floor lower to the basement where he had a tiny little office, and he'd take off his suit and write all day in his underwear. So So, Lee, you've got some questions for us? So then maybe I will open it up to the floor for questions or comments. And if there's comments, please try to keep the comments short and the questions long. Yeah.
Do any of you guys do translation work? Work as translator or translate literary works?
Yeah. And anybody can answer, yeah.
Yes, actually I did. I was trying to translate Dylan Thomas, and then I realized that I'm not able to do so.
Well, I asked because I have a friend who's a full-time editor at Novi Mir, and she publishes a lot of her own stuff and gets paid for it, but she makes most of her income as a medical translator, doing medical texts from Russian to English or English to Russian.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has a full-time job at Novi Mir.
And that's what writers or poets do in Latvia as well, and making some stupid sentences for ads.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your relationship to boredom or tedium, and how maybe, at times it's been a detriment, kept you from, being able to be engaged with your creativity, but have there also been times where you feel like you kind of found inspiration in those very boring times?
Yeah, anybody can answer.
Yes, sometimes when I'm bored to write or think, I travel a lot and then trying to get inspiration, because as I already mentioned in my paper, as a researcher, I have to travel a lot and have to explore the other people's lives. So sometimes it makes, feed a lot of information to me, and yes, to stimulate my mind to write something.
Sometimes I get bored. I go to the cafe and sit there and listen other people. Only 3 or 4 hours that they are talking, chatting. So I found some lines, some quotation from their thinking. So sometimes that's get help me to write more. That's my idea.
I think it's different for being a poet, because I never write like, sit and now I will write. Never. I am writing only then when inspiration is coming, and it can happen everywhere, at work, at bus, at bathroom, maybe at nighttime. So I'm feeling really, secure about my writing. I can be and do everything, and I always have my notebook in my bag.
So do that.
Thank you.
To find other employment, do you go to school and find other training opportunities? Anybody do that?
It would be great. But I have no time for it. I should work, and maybe someday when I will be rich.
Thwada, I wanted to follow up, Thwada, on the stories that you wrote about the people along the border, the Sino-Burmese border. What has been the effect on your countrymen's perception of the Rohingya that you have been writing about? Has it changed the feeling in any way that you can discern?
Actually, that border stories was published in last June.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so actually we just, the Rohingya issue is very sensitive and is untouchable. That's why, but regarding with Chinese, it's a little bit less sensitive than Rohingya. That's why we're trying to touch the China border first. And that we would like to let the public know how the border life is. Then we hope to the readers, they would understand the people living on other borders like that. But actually, we could publish only 100 copies. Yeah. And so And after, this 100 copy was really well accepted by the readers. But it is these are the people from the higher class, like working in NGO like that. That's why now we are trying to reach these copies to the wider public. And then after that, we are also wondering to continue such kind of writing to continue such kind of story in other borders area like Thailand, Myanmar border, and also Myanmar-Bangladesh border. So I think later the people perception might something change. Yeah.
And do you include, are there plans to put those stories up online so they would have wider distributing?
Now?
No, yeah. Would it be, since you could only publish 100 copies of that issue, is there any talk of publishing it online so that it would have wider?
Yes. We provide the download link.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, to free download. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. I'm not quite sure if I follow this question. As artists, do you believe since 2017 that the world is flat? More, I'm not quite sure what it says, more miser. Whoever wrote this question, can you explain what you mean? What a surprise. Yeah.
As an American, to me, the world has become flat. Everybody is miserable in that our president has changed the governance of the world.
So, Mary, could we try to direct this to talking about the writing days that they're doing here?
Yeah, and I want to know, is that fodder for any of your poetry? Or do you just...
Well, we have one poet on the panel who lives in Latvia, so that's probably not, Trump is probably not uppermost in your imagination, right?
Actually, many people are talking about Trump in my country. Yes, it's true, and he's always in our newspapers as well about what he's doing. I'm not ready to talk about politics, but I hope he will not win your elections here.
Other questions, yeah. Usha.
So as you were all relating to livelihood from writing, you sound like inventors and entrepreneurs. I mean, that's the same problem. Like, until you're recognized, you're not making any money, but very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Who are your support networks? Is it your family? Is it your friends? Is it other writers in your local environment? Or is it IWP?
Sorry, like supporters because we are writing with money or with
As
what?
a writer.
As a writer.
Who's your support? Like, if you're feeling low, who do you go and talk to?
Nobody. Because, I was always fighting about my daily life, about money, what I earn. Nobody helps me. But as I read that it is possible to ask for money for book, but it's even sometimes they're just... Can you imagine that the commission is coming? And I just got a few letters that my book is not a priority of Latvian literature sphere like this. And I submitted my second book for 3 times. And after that, they just decided to give me 1,000 euros. It's around $1,200. And of course, I felt good to have this money, but I'm even not counting on any support, like financial, from literature's field in Latvia.
Don't you get support from other writers and you get together and talk about what you're writing about?
We're supporting each other with drinks at the cafe.
So maybe I'll interject with this question from the audience. What does the ideal writer's life look like?
Buddhi has I think, ideal life.
The ideal writing life.
No.
Is that?
Just I am. So that's the question. When I get low in the Asia, in the Nepal is a small country. So nobody thought that any writer, any poets can live with writing. So when in my struggle time, I convinced first my family. there is no money, but I am passionate about it. That's why my family is supporting me. Not much money, but they don't ask for the money from me. So, and when I get low, I'll read, my favorite writers' story, their biography, and every writers in their life, they, struggle in the very low phase, and that's me give the courage to fight. And as a fiction writer, when I get low in the life, many problems there, and one point I get sad about that, and another point I'll think a better way, because this thing happening right now, but I will write about it later. That's my story. So I'll come through like that, and I'll manage that thing.
Batsirai, I've been wondering, since you work in marketing, does your work in marketing take away from your creative energies, or does it feed your creativity?
I think it takes away a lot. In that by the time you get home, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And sometimes something flashes in your mind, but you can't develop it fully because you don't have the time to. And also, I don't get to travel that much. I was actually lucky. My employer actually allowed me to come on unpaid leave to IWP, and I really appreciate that, and that they actually also appreciate that I'm a writer in my other life. So I think it takes away a lot, and I don't get to read as much as I want to. I don't get to write as much as I want to as well.
Because there is a tradition in this country of sometimes poets working in advertising. Jack Spicer famously gave us the line that Raid, which is a pesticide, Raid kills bugs dead. That was his tagline. And James Dickey gave us the line, things go better with Coke. But I should note that they each left advertising at a certain point. I saw a question up there.
Yeah, so how much of your work is influenced by audiobooks and that whole industry?
Yes, in our country, audiobook is not very popular because we are a little bit far off the electronic device, and the country is not much developed. But we create some audiobooks for the people who with the seeing impairment. Yes, that is just not for the profit. Yeah.
And in the Nepal, there is no audio books kind of things, but some when we publish the book, some radio will read our books, and they put in the website free. And my first book is in the YouTube, and thousands of people listen that novel in free. But I'm happy because it is almost 10 years past. So, but sometimes reader thinks this is a good book, so I can help writer, so they can buy and from the bookshop. But we're trying to do some audio books also, because this is an easy way to connect with reader. I feel that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So as you guys were growing as a high school or a college student, if somebody would ask you what you want to become in the future, what used to be your answer?
In the future? No?
Like, somebody would ask you what you want to become.
When you were students, what?
Okay. And I also write my first poetry I am in the I think 6th standard, and that poetry is aired from the radio Nepal with our radio. So that time I feel that because I am not a good student, so And I don't have any friend circle, and I'm not a sport person also, so I don't have any friend. So I write and post in the radio, and they on air, and I became a popular in the school. And sometimes I get fail into 2 subjects. Teacher will do less. He's a good poet. Let put. Just forget about 2 subjects. That's kind of thing.
Okay, I wanted to be an HR executive. I actually trained as an HR practitioner. And then somewhere along the way, when I was 14, I think that's when I started writing. And then I just happened to be lucky to meet Chirukure. Chirukure was one of the participants at IWP. And I was writing, and then there was a writer's workshop, and then the rest, as they say, is history. But I have always wanted, I've always had this thing for writing and reading. And up to now, I still ask myself, should I actually study something and concentrate on writing, or should I continue studying HR? And yeah, so I'm still trying to balance that.
For me, in my childhood, actually, to say the truth, I don't want to be nothing. Yes, because in our time, because of the frequent students' demonstrations, the university closed quite often, so we lost the future. So when somebody asked me, what do you want to be in the future, I said nothing. But the most certain thing is I never replying to them, I would like to be a writer. Because as I said, my father is an author and my mother is a breadwinner. So what my mother told me that, you see, your father is useless and as he cannot make money. As you see, I'm really tired of seeking money, so you don't need to follow his steps. Yes, that's the word I quite often had from my mother. That's why I don't want to be a writer. But the surprising thing is, I always created stories and told those stories to my friends. So my friends loved me a lot. And I also wrote down some short story in my exercise book, and then I borrowed that book to my friend with $1. Yes, like that. So what I would like to say is, even though I don't want to be a writer, in my unconscious mind, yes, I would like to be a writer. So after I was graduated with a French diploma, a French degree, French literature degree, my father, at the time, I didn't find any appropriate job with the degree I got. At the time, my father asked me to work in a media field. Yeah, the owner, that media owner is his friend. So I work for the media field as a journalist, and then I start writing. Thank you.
When I was 11 years old, I fell in love with theater because my city theater chose me for the role in the musical, The Sound of Music. And I was a member of Von Trapp's family. My name was Luisa. So since that time, I love theater so much, and maybe I still want to be an actress. But I finished in college pianism. I'm a pianist too, and after that I just went to university to study culture management. So, but I was writing since I remember myself. In a kindergarten, I started to write short childly poems like this.
We have a question here. The question is, in the U.S., many writers make a living teaching creative writing. Do you, would you, and if not, why not?
Repeat, please.
The question is, in the U.S., in this country, many writers make a living by teaching creative writing. Do you teach creative writing? Would you teach creative writing, or why not, if you chose not to?
Thank you.
I do it for fun. I do it with school kids. But what I've tried to distance myself from is have it sponsored by someone due to other reasons, because I've worked in the NGO sector before. The Gantt charts and the number crunching, I don't want all that. I just want to make sure the kids can tell stories and they can read. So I do that only when I have time. So if I have a few days off, me and a couple of friends, we find a school. We go there, we spend the day with the kids, we teach them writing, and then we read for them, and then donate a couple of books when we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you teach them writing, and what age are these students?
Mostly primary school students from grade 4 mostly to grade 7, and then high school kids as well. Yeah.
Do you give them writing exercises, or?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Others want to take the question on?
Yes, I would love to. In Latvia, we are organizing literature camps for people who want to be a poets. And sometimes they are inviting me just to share my experience. And I can tell the truth, there is no rules how to teach to be a poet, how to write a poem. But what I'm doing, I'm always very happy just to share my experience, what I learned from my editor, from great poet in Latvia. So, yes, it happens.
Can you give us a sense of what some of those lessons might be that you pass on?
Okay. For example, poetry for me counts only then, but this is just for me, when it's coming for the real experience. And I'm always telling my stories to them, and I'm trying to share that it's not necessary to put long sentences or to write a long poem and try to be good and nice only. You just to be very concentrate, I like small forms, and I like a really straight language. And this is what I'm learning to students. But I absolutely respect any different opinions and ways how to write.
In my country, there were some classes that is run by private. The classes like content writing for marketing purpose, and also the script writing for the script writers, like that. But there is no training or classes for fiction writing. I don't know why, but sometimes I'm wondering to provide such kind of training. But what am I thinking? I think writing is not a good job for them. So even if I run such kind of training, who else come to mind?
Do you want to say anything?
No, but we are in the Nepal. They are doing one classes every 2 months. I think 15, 20 people will join the classes. But they are all the retired people come there, and just they wanna learn how to write. I did 2 or 3 classes, and I find myself I have to learn more. After telling that, so in my country, if there is a good writing workshop, writing classes happen, I will join into that class.
Other questions? Yeah.
So here, out of all 4 writers, you are the only guy, right? So is there a gender inequality in writing in Nepal? Are men more supported in writing than women?
Yeah, in the around the world, there's things happen. In Nepal too, but in the Nepal now, a female writer is rising brilliantly. And sometimes, in the past 10 years, you can pick the best book from the 10 years. I think I think 60% books come from the female writers. So they are doing great writing in Nepal because they don't spoke from the many years. So now they are start to spoke their feelings, their things. So they come out with so brilliant writing.
Others want to take that question on?
What about Latvia, actually?
Not easy to answer because we are equal in my country, but still, that statistics show something different, that men are more, and also with the traveling to other residencies or writing programs, I have feeling that men are has been chosen more than women writers, but it's getting better and better.
I think in Zimbabwe, I will speak from the spoken word poet point of view. Even the platforms that exist for performance, they are male dominated, such that even you find that most of the writers that are there are men. But I am grateful. I don't know if it's for everyone, but to my as of my experience, there are people who actually mentor you through as you go, and I am grateful that I've had that mentorship from most of the older writers, especially the male writers. But yeah, the Zimbabwe Women Writers Association hasn't been effective, I think, in the past 10 years or so. Probably mostly due to what's happening in the country, and that the organization has not been able to run because of financial issues and so forth. But it was an organization that mentored women writers mostly and saw the rise of your Virginia Pires, it was headed by Chiedza Msengezi, who was also a writer. And now, because it's not there, I think the momentum kind of fell down. So yeah, that's my contribution on that one.
I think we've come to the end of our hour here. Is any final last comments? Yeah, in the way back. Yeah.
I guess since you've talked about kind of dual lives in terms of your jobs and writing, is there ever something that you wanted to write, but maybe you were censoring yourself either because of your work or the political situation in your country or anything like that, a conflict between the two that affected your writing?
Wonderful question. So the difference, have you ever come up against a subject you could not write about, either because of political considerations or self-censorship? Yeah.
I can write everything if I want. We are independent in that way.
For me now, censorship was lifted in 2012 after the political reform started. But we have to be responsible for what we write, because we need to practice self-censorship. Because if we write something wrong or something, how should I say? Yes, something trying to destroy the way of democratic system, like the government practice. At the time, the government can punish us. That's why we're trying to practice self-censorship. Yeah.
Doesn't sound quite like self-censorship as much as straight-on censorship, though, right?
I think I would like to write more about women's reproductive issues, but then I'm thinking if I put it out there, what will my work colleagues say? Or what will my parents think? Also, the other issue is, like right now, there's too much repression in terms of what you write and what you share, especially on social media platforms. We had a female comedian who was arrested, actually abducted and beaten and left for dead somewhere in the last couple of weeks. And so when things like that start happening, you want to be very careful of what you say. Yeah, so you want to say it, but you want to be very careful of what you say.
Ismail? But there is in the Nepal, there is only they censor the movies. In the literature, there is no censorship, but a new thing happening there, because the writer writes about other community, other people, and now they are reading their stories from the book, and sometimes they find some misleading content about their self, and they can go to court to censor that paragraph or that kind of things. Now I think that's the good things, because they read their own stories and they are fighting from their stories. That's the good, I think.
It's a sobering place to bring a wonderful panel to a close.